Ladies and gentlemen, a Monmouth College Board of Trustee member, Mr. Doug Carlson.
So, thank you very much. Good afternoon. I'm Doug Carlson. I'm a member of the class of 1966. And it's rather daunting to be the kickoff event here. I'll try to justify whomever put me in the pole position. So here's the way this works. I write this out, I put together these slides, and once I've written it out, I can usually speak without looking at it, but on occasion I have to. We have a lot of slides here, so I'm going to go quickly. The topic, I chose the topic. I like the topic. I'm interested in the topic. Like most of you, I spent 4 years in Monmouth. Like Abraham Lincoln, I'm a lawyer. Like Lincoln and some of you, I've spent most of my life in Illinois. And like all of you, I admire Abraham Lincoln. From humble beginnings, he rose to save the Union, free the slaves, and become an admired person throughout the world. So although he lived most of his adult life about 120 miles from here, he visited Monmouth probably once, or probably twice, but certainly once. And this is the story of these two visits. But to me, the story is more complete and better understood in historical context. So today I'll tell you these stories, but it's going to be put in the context of the history of Monmouth, of Midwestern United States, and of Lincoln. And hopefully I've struck the right balance between providing historical context and unnecessarily burdening you with the details of the Treaty of Versailles. So I have a lot of slides. I'm going to scoot through them. But first of all, I'm going to try and put you in the Lincoln mode. This works. Does it work? What do I have to do? It worked beforehand. Can I take the right clicker? Got it. All right, so in the history of the world, what person has been the subject of most books? Tied for number 2 is Lincoln. Who's he tied with? Who sent Napoleon? All right, so I'm going to have another one of these at the end of this. The idea here is to equip you with very soundbite-like factoids that will make you a little better at cocktail parties. So I'm going to go through this kind of historically, one after the other, tying Lincoln and Monmouth together. No questions. If there are questions, is Jeff Rankin in the room? Jeff is the real Monmouth historian. That's where the questions go. About Monmouth. Questions about Lincoln? That's Ralph Whiteman back here. Okay. So, let's start with some background of the Midwest, well before Abraham Lincoln or Monmouth. It's working too well here. Okay, we're going to go back to 1670. This is maybe you recognize it, Illinois. And in 1673, Marquette and Julia explored the area, going from Lake Michigan, what is now Lake Michigan, through Wisconsin, down to Illinois, down to Arkansas, and then back up the Illinois River through Chicago. Marquette was a priest. Joliet was a fur trader. Lots of fur traders. That's what happened to this territory for the next 200 years. In July of 1787, after the Revolutionary War, and after there was a Treaty of Versailles, at which Britain ceded its claim to the Northwest Territory to the United States. And then the United States, the Continental Congress enacted the ordinance establishing the Northwest Territory. You can see that here, maybe you can't see, But here you can see, not surprisingly, the area is populated by Native Americans. By this time in 1787, there are some forts. They're French forts. So now we go to 1792. We're going fast here. Kentucky became a state. What was happening was the immigrant population, if you will, the European population, moved in from the east and moved west. And as they moved west, the places where they settled became states. So Kentucky became a state in 1792. And you're going to see this a lot because Abraham Lincoln was born on February 12, 1809 in Hodgenville, Kentucky, a state. Lived, as you probably know the story, with his parents, was a farmer, very humble beginnings, very tough life. So we're going to go to 1800, I'm sorry, to 1810. As settlers moved west, Native Americans were displaced. And there were numerous battles along the way. But in 1811, the Native Americans banded together under Tecumseh and fought in organized fashion. The first big battle being the Battle of Tippecanoe, which happened right in northern, or in southern, like central Indiana. That was kind of the precursor to the War of 1812. The British sacked Washington, occupied Washington, and the Star-Spangled Banner was inspired by the Battle of Fort McHenry, which is basically Baltimore. So now we're coming closer to home, because in anticipation of the War of 1812 to 1814, Congress passed the Military Bounty Land Act of 1812. It was common then to enlist people in the Army in return for a promise of plots of land. And that's what happened here. And so veterans of the War of 1812 were given plots of land in here, the bounty lands in western Illinois. And as you can probably tell, Monmouth is within those bounty lands. So let's go back here. Beginning then, more people immigrated from the east to the west. The people, the veterans who were given the bounty lands because of their service in the War of 1812, pretty much sold them to speculators. Speculators sold them, but on down the chain, a lot of those people that got their land, starting from the bounty land as a result of the War of 1812, settled in this area. So now we have, in 1816, 4 years later, Lincoln moved again. He moved into Spencer County, and shortly thereafter, first Illinois, I don't know if you can see this very well, first Illinois, and then Indiana became a state. Now we're coming really close to home, because in 1825, Warren County was established by an act of the legislature. But it was, at least by modern terms, rather oddly established. It was initially, in 1825, part of Pike County. You can see all of these counties were all established pretty much at the same time, but under the same set of circumstances. The circumstances were, they're all administered through Pike County until the residents of the county can prove that there are 350 residents. Then you can become your own county. And that's what happened. But shortly after that, way east of us, another event that influenced the Monmouth and Lincoln, but Monmouth in particular happened, and that was the opening of the Erie Canal. The Erie Canal provided a waterway across New York, up to Lake Champlain, up to this lake, and down to New York City, providing a continuous, unbroken waterway from the Atlantic Ocean to Chicago. quite get to the Mississippi yet, because west of Chicago, immediately west of Chicago, there was a portage that was taken care of later. But the result of that was, it was an easier route for immigrants to come from the east to at least Chicago, and it also was a route for goods to go eastward to the cities. Now, as I told you, an event has to occur, or had to occur, when in order for one of these attached counties to in fact become a county on its own. And that happened. It happened in 1831, and by court order, Warren County was established. But it did not have a county seat. And so, by court order, people gathered in, I believe, Oquawka to decide where the county seat was going to be. And they decided upon the current site of Monmouth, but they didn't have a name. And so the story goes that they drew 3 names out of a hat. These are the 3 names. First one was Kosciuszko. Now, but for something very quirksome right there, this could be Kosciuszko College. But they decided it was hard to pronounce and even harder to spell, so the second name drawn was Monmouth. And the city was established. So here we have another move of Lincoln in 1830. Now by this time he is 21 years old. He's born in 1809, and he moves with his family to Decatur, but a year later he strikes out on his own. And he goes to New Salem, which is a town north of Springfield, where he spends a lot of time before he becomes a lawyer. And now we're starting to, in time and space, intersect between the Monmouth area and Abraham Lincoln, because in 1812, there was the Blackhawk War. Now, along the way let's see here, there were very many treaties with the Native Americans. 1795, 1804, 1816, 1821, 1825, and 1829. All of them affecting Illinois. And under those treaties, the Native Americans ceded land to the United States. But in 1812, Blackhawk, who was in Iowa, decided that he didn't like that and persuaded others to come with him and came across the river. One of the initial events of the Blackhawk War was a reported scalping and murder southwest of Monmouth. The call went out to the United States Army and from the governor of Illinois to form a set of troops to combat Blackhawk. And Lincoln signed up. And so he served in the Illinois militia during the Blackhawk War. The militia was a set of basically citizens. They signed up for like 30-day stints. And then you can re-up or go home, re-up or go home. Lincoln re-upped a couple times. He never saw battle, but he initially went to Oquawka. Oquawka, over the years, was before it was called Oquawka, it was called Yellowbanks. Actually, Lower Yellowbanks. On the east side of the Mississippi River, I've never been there, but supposedly there's yellow sand from Oquawka north to, I think, as far as New Boston. And I think New Boston was Upper Yellowbanks. I think Keithsburg was Middle Yellowbanks, and Oquawka was Lower Yellowbanks. He spent a couple of days there. He probably established some contacts that helped him later in his political life. He was a captain of his militia. He was elected captain by his his fellows from New Salem, which is where his original set of militiamen were from. He, throughout his life, was very proud of having been elected a captain. He re-upped, and as I said, never saw battle, but he then, I think, went back home from near Peoria. And ultimately, the combination of the Army and the militia defeated Blackhawk, forced them west of the Mississippi, made this area and area around it perceptibly safer for immigrants, and therefore the immigration was enhanced. People felt safer, and so they were more likely to immigrate, and they did. This is the actual battle line of the militia and army from Fort Armstrong, which is Rock Island, up through a couple of battles, and finally the battle up on the western coast of Wisconsin, where Blackhawk was defeated. This is Lincoln's New Salem set of militiamen, signed by by him, created by him. Here he is at the top, Abraham Lincoln, and this was, I think, on their mustering out. But also on their mustering out, he signed certificates for his militiamen. Why? Because they were eligible for bounty land, not necessarily in this area, but in Iowa. And in fact, Abraham Lincoln, as a result of his having served in the Blackhawk War, received 2 plots of land in Iowa, which he which he never visited, but which he held until his death, when they were disposed of in his estate. And so these are certificates signed by Lincoln, this one in September of 1832, the other one in August of 1832, attesting to the proposition that his men had served, and ultimately they were eligible for the bounty payment. So he went back home. By this time, having been born in 1809, in 1834 he was 25, and he had political aspirations. And he was elected to the Illinois House of Representatives. At the time, the capital of Springfield was in Vandalia. What happened was the population, the immigrant population of Illinois basically started in the south. People came down the Ohio River and settled on the north and south sides of the river. And so the southern end of Illinois was settled before the northern end. And there's a kind of a rough proposition that goes like this. It is desirable for the capital of a state to be geographically situated in the middle of the population of the state. And so as the population of Illinois gradually crept northward, the capital of the state moved from one place to another. When Lincoln was sworn in to be, when he became a member of the House of Representatives, it was Vandalia, which was south of Springfield. And then during his term, he was a proponent of its moving to Springfield. So now let's go closer to home. Stagecoach Service. This was the big deal. And this may have come into play in the first event that takes Lincoln probably to Monmouth. And it goes like this. During the Blackhawk War, or perhaps before, Abraham Lincoln met people in Springfield, one of whom was a land speculator, and he decided that the area that is now New Boston was ripe for speculation. The area was now safe. I believe directly across the river was the confluence of the Iowa River. Now, mind you, this was a big, river traffic was big. And so he bought land that is now New Boston. Lincoln was moving kind of, he had several jobs in his youth. One of them was as a surveyor. This was a good job. People were moving in. Settlements were moving north. Towns needed to be surveyed. And he was not the chief surveyor, but he trained himself to be a surveyor, and then he worked as an assistant surveyor for the chief surveyor in Sangamon County, which is Springfield. And he got this kind of side gig way north. And we don't know how he got there. New Boston is north, is on the Mississippi, it's north of Monmouth. He could have come up the river. He could have come by stagecoach. He could have come by horse. He probably came by horse because Monmouth was the county seat. He knew he was going to have to file something in Monmouth, but New Boston, there was no stagecoach to New Boston. There was no traffic to New Boston. You had to get there either by boat along the river or by horse, and he needed a horse, so he probably came by horse. And then he conducted his survey of New Boston, and this is a copy of his survey as I think it exists today as filed in the circuit court in Monmouth of the survey of New Boston that was prepared by Abraham Lincoln. We don't know if he physically came to Monmouth to file it. He probably did, because the people with whom or for whom he did business, they were there. There's an attestation to the fact that people, his colleagues were there. So we think he did, but we don't know. There obviously there was no copy machine, but people learned to make physically very good copies. So not long after this occurred, Mercer County proved that it had 350 residents and became a county on its own. New Boston is located in Mercer County. Mercer County was kind of a part of Warren County, which is why, at the time, that's why Lincoln filed it in Monmouth. But shortly thereafter, Mercer County separated, and that's a copy that was filed in the county seat of the same survey, done in hand by we don't know who. But that's how they did things. I think that's how they did legal pleadings too. They had no, they certainly had no multiple copying. They certainly had no ink paper like we used to use to make multiple copies. They didn't have any of that. I assume it was a profession that people would make copies. So this is a copy of the same plot that was of the same survey done by Lincoln, probably not created himself this same document, but filed in Warren or in Mercer County. So I think Dick Yonke's going to be here. Yonke is a John Deere alum. Like the Erie Canal, this is an event that did not happen in Monmouth, but it affected Monmouth and the entire Midwest a lot altogether. John Deere, before John Deere began manufacturing a steel plow, people were not using wooden plows, they were using iron plows, and there were various variations on the theme of steel plow. But this particular steel plow was curved, and the metal was such that when you plowed, the ground didn't stick to it. It just flew off to the side. Now, we're here on top of what had to have been millions of years of prairie grass and prairie grass residue. That's tough stuff to plow through. And this made plowing a lot easier. And he not only he kind of invented this type of steel plow, but he began manufacturing it, and they proliferated, and that again spurred immigration, spurred farming in the area. So let's move back to Lincoln. In 1837, he was admitted to the Illinois Supreme Court. There were no law schools. He read legal treatises on his own. He would spend time with other lawyers. And then ultimately, the way it was done was a lawyer, an actual practicing lawyer, would attest to the proposition that you can do it. You're worthy of being a lawyer. And that's what happened to Lincoln. And on that date, he was admitted to the Illinois Supreme Court. Now, what this is, you probably have heard stories of Lincoln riding the circuit. He did that. I'll tell you what the circuit was, but first I'll tell you what it was not. It did not include Monmouth. Instead, it was southeast of Monmouth. And what happened was, first by horse, and then later, as there were roads, by buggy, a judge and lawyers would travel from town to town to town to town, trying cases. And that was called riding the circuit. And Lincoln loved it. He was a raconteur, he was the leader of the troops, and he was very good at it. He would have people in advance in a town having lined up clients for him. And he would meet the client, go underneath the tree, talk to the client for 20 minutes, and go back and try the case. And that's the way it worked then. And this was the 8th Circuit, and these are drawings of courthouses within the 8th Circuit. And he did that pretty much from 1837. He left for Washington in 1860. He was in Washington itself for 2 years, from 1847 to 1849. He did it a lot between, let's say, 49 and 54, 55, but he did it, I think, even beforehand, and that was, he had a varied practice, but he loved that, and he was very good at that. But not in Monmouth. So now we have Lincoln moving for the final time until he became president when he moved to Washington. He moved from New Salem to Springfield. At the time, a big town. This was the state capital. He not only rode the circuit, he argued 230 cases in the Illinois Supreme Court. He got referrals from lawyers all over the state, cases that had been lost. An appeal was made, and Lincoln would take them on and argue with them before the Illinois Supreme Court. So he practiced law in Springfield from the time he moved there, from 37 until when he went to Washington. So here we have, this is the final split off. Here's Warren, here's Henderson, and here's Mercer. And that happened in 1841 with, I think, Oquaka as the county seat. So now we're going to take a relative side trip from Lincoln, but we're going to stick with Monmouth. Because the story goes that in 1841, there was a warrant issued by the state of Missouri on Joseph Smith, the leader of the Mormons. and it was, he was captured in Illinois. And the question was, should he be extradited to Missouri? And the story goes that he was taken to Quincy, which is where Stephen Douglas, then a member of the Illinois Supreme Court, was. And Stephen Douglas decided, there's a brand new courthouse in Monmouth. I'll try you there. And so on June 9, 1841, Joseph Smith was tried before Illinois Supreme Court Justice Stephen Douglas in what was then the brand new courthouse in Monmouth, Illinois. He got off on a technicality, by the way. So we're not done with Stephen Douglas for a long time. This doesn't look like Stephen Douglas. This is Mary Todd, whom Lincoln married. Mary Todd was a catch. She had lots of suitors. One of them was Stephen Douglas. Lincoln, up from humble beginnings, no money. He had to have been. He had to have had even then a spectacular rise to have captured Mary Todd. Mary Todd was educated. Her family had some money, and at least in the beginning, as I understand it, they were a true partnership. She loved politics. They talk a lot about politics, and they remained married until Lincoln died. Living in Springfield until Lincoln moved to Washington. So here's another event that spurred immigration to the Midwest. Like the plow, this was very important, perhaps even more important. The reaper. It's for oats, wheat, and as I understand it, one reaper can do the work of 5 or 6 men. So this was an incredible labor saver. And Cyrus McCormick began manufacturing the reaper on the north bank of the Chicago River in 1845, right where the Chicago River meets Lake Michigan. And it was very successful, and it too helped to spur immigration to the Midwest. This is the earliest known photograph. I think this is a daguerreotype. I think in order of evolution, if you will, going backwards, it goes photograph, daguerreotype, and then ambrotype. I don't pretend to know the physical difference, but I think that's what they were. And I think this was a daguerreotype. Lincoln ran for and was elected to Congress in 1847. And I think this was a photograph of him upon his, either while he was in Congress or when he was elected to Congress. So, Cyrus McCormick, right there with a plant, right there, knew that the Illinois and Michigan Canal was being constructed. As I told you, relating to the Erie Canal, the Erie Canal created a continuous waterway from New York City and Canada all the way to Chicago. This completed the continuous waterway all the way down to New Orleans. Before this, I don't know how navigable some of this was, and I do know that about right there, there was a portage. There was no waterway. And so that's what this really did. And in an age when, before railroads were rampant, and certainly before stagecoaches were all that regular, the waterways, that's how people traveled. That's how goods traveled. So this was really important. And here we have Cyrus McCormick, and this helped This helped him sell his reapers all the way up and down here, but it also helped immigration all the way up and down here because it was easy for people to get themselves and their goods down to here. Going the other way, it was also easy for people to, goods, oats, wheat, hay, corn, whatever happened to have manufactured that might have been going eastward. So the traffic went both ways. So I'm going to toss in just it has nothing to do with Lincoln, it has something to do with Monmouth, just to give you a weight. Because March 1848, that's when Wyatt Earp was born here. All right, so now let's go, I think we're on time here. All right, we're going to go to this decade. And now we're closer to home. I love this map. This is an 1869 map. It's called a Birdseye View of Monmouth. And the fellow who did that made 50 or 60 of these for Midwestern towns at about the same time. We are not in 1869 when this was created. We're in 1853, and there undoubtedly were some changes between 1853 and 1869, but I couldn't find anything approaching a map like this, and this is a wonderful map. That's the college. We're looking kind of southwest. That's Broadway. Main is here. That's a little better. And the original Monmouth Academy was over here on the northwest side of town. Now mind you, as I said, this is an 1869 map. In 1853, that's where we are on our time journey. This did not exist. This was built in 1863. The depot, a big thing. And look at the commerce. The commerce is down here, or at least a lot of buildings, probably because the depot is down there. That's what drove, I think, anyway. All right. So now let's go national. In 1857 was the Dred Scott decision. The Dred Scott decision, here's where I have to read a little here. So, the court held that a Negro whose ancestors were imported into the U.S. and sold as slaves, whether enslaved or free, could not be an American citizen, and therefore had no standing to sue in federal court. And that the federal government had no power to regulate slavery in the federal territories acquired after the creation of the United States. This was a bombshell for everybody. The South, they thought, we win, fair and square. The North is taken aback. And this, as much as anything, there were a couple of legislative actions along the way, but it reinvigorated Abraham Lincoln and made him want to re-enter politics. And so he decided to run against Stephen Douglas, who by this time was a long-time member of Congress. I think he was elected to Congress like in 1844, and he was at this time a U.S. Senator, a very powerful U.S. Senator. If anybody is responsible, any one person is responsible for making Chicago a railroad hub, it might be Stephen Douglas. But Stephen Douglas was a proponent of the institution of slavery. And so Lincoln decided to run against him. And this is from his House Divided speech, which he gave in the state capitol in Springfield. I'll just let you read it. Okay, so on the heels of that, what happened? Monmouth graduated its first class with women. Monmouth was the first college or university in the state of Illinois by a long shot to admit women. I think the University of Iowa admitted women before Monmouth did. But this was just very, very unusual. And women graduated, women were among the first graduating class from Monmouth. So on the heels of that was the first Lincoln-Douglas debate. Lincoln and Douglas were vying for, and we're coming to the second connection with Monmouth because that connection was right during the middle of the Lincoln-Douglas debates. They're vying for Douglas's Senate seat. The issue was slavery. They have 7 debates. The north part of the state, quite roughly, was anti-slavery. The south part of the state, quite roughly, was pro-slavery. Most of the debates were in the middle of the state because that's where the contested voters were. And so here you have the lineup of the debates in order. These were not just debates. I don't know if you can see that. There's one north, south, and the rest of them are in the middle. This is from the first debate. 12,000 people present. And that by far was not the biggest one. This was a combination political event and World Series. People came in wagons. They stayed overnight. They had banners. They sang songs. They were all highly publicized in local papers, all of which were very partisan. They were very pro-Lincoln, or they were very anti-Lincoln. So this is the first one at Ottawa. This is obviously a drawing of the next one at Freeport. I'm getting my goods here because I realize I'm about to read from something, but I have it buried in my suitcase here, so give me a second. So let's see if I can give you something to look at while I'm doing that. So here we go. This is right after the. Can you read this? Can you read this? Can you read? No, yeah. That wasn't intended. Right? All right, I'll read it to you. This was a day or two after the Galesburg debate. This is from the Galesburg Democrat of October 9, 1858. The Monmouth Republican Glee Club enlivened the evening with some of the most laughable songs, ground out by one of their number who gets them up to suit the times. One was written after the speeches of the day were over and portrayed the manner in which Lincoln shaved Douglas in the most side-splitting style. The club is said to be making more Republicans in Warren County than all of the stumpers, the politicians, put together. So give me a second. Let's see what if I give you another one to look at here. Okay, we'll get you. We'll get you there. You can look at this because not only were there debates, but interspersed among the debates, this was a political campaign. They were given side speeches, and one of them was in Monmouth. And I'm going to show you exactly what Abraham Lincoln looked like on the day he gave a speech in Monmouth, because his ambrotype was taken. This is now in the Smithsonian. Give me a second to look for this. So as I said, the papers were highly partisan, and the papers reported on this speech. So I'm going to read to you, just parts of the report of this speech from the Chicago Tribune, which was a highly partisan Lincoln paper. When we arrived at the grounds, we found we had fully as many as the Douglasites had had last week. Douglas had spoken here the week before. And that they were mostly voters, while theirs were full of women and children. I'll explain in a second. Mr. Lincoln was received at the stand by Dr. Gilbert, our late member of the legislature, in a very eloquent speech, of which I will not attempt to give any synopsis. The Monmouth Republican Glee Club then gave us one of their original songs, and here let me say they can't be beat. I've never known Lincoln to make so elaborate, full, and perfect an argument as he did here, and I have heard him 4 times this fall. His speech told, men who were wavering were seen to throw up their hats in hurrah for Lincoln. The meeting was closed with another song from the Glee Club. Now contrast that with a report from the Monmouth newspaper, Monmouth Review, a partisan Douglas newspaper. Speaking of the same speech, his whole speech was a personal attack on Douglas and Democrats. He dodged the issues before the people and failed entirely to discuss the principles dividing the 2 parties. It was not marked by the dignity of a would-be senator or by the abilities of a statesman, and was coldly received by the small crowd present. As I said, newspapers were partisan. Okay, so this is where the ambrotype was taken. I think it was on the north part of what is now the square. And as you can see, buildings of the type did multi-duty. And we have ambrotype rooms. Next door we have Rankin furniture, and we have Rankin. And I think rooms kind of means it's kind of a boarding house too. That's from many of the maps. There weren't very many maps of the area, but there was an 1860 map of Warren County, which nobody has a good copy of. The Monmouth Library has one, but it's in terrible shape. And I kind of found one that as you saw maps earlier, there were often depicted buildings along the side. This was one of the buildings depicted along the side of the Warren County map. This is where the speech occurred. You've seen this before. We're looking southwest. It was basically it was jury rigged together. It was in a lumber yard, but he drew well, despite what the review said. And he gave a speech. It was windy. It was cold. It was rainy, but he still drew a crowd. So, as you know, he lost. The way it worked at the time, the candidates were not on the ballot. The senator was elected by the legislature, and the legislature, the legislators were elected by the people, and Lincoln lost the election. But all of the events of the Lincoln-Douglas debates were so publicized throughout the country that did as much as anything to catapult him to national prominence as a politician. So I'm going to wind up here, I think I'm right on time, with one more factoid. Now, we have 8 photographs of Lincoln. I'm here to tell you that 4 of them are before he became president. I'm sorry, there are 10 of them, and 5 of them were before he became president, and 5 of them were after he became president. And if you know the trick, you should be able to tell in a glance which are which. What's the trick?
No beard.
You got it. The story goes that before, as he was about to leave on the train, having been elected president from Springfield to Washington, he was given, he received a letter from maybe an 11, 12, 13-year-old girl in New York who said, "Mr. Lincoln, you'd look good in a beard." So he grew a beard. But the rest of the story goes, that same little girl spent the rest of her life you know, and basically with her giving speeches about as a cottage industry as to how she recommended to get. So I thank you for your attention. Ask Jeff or Ralph.
Illinois said north and south pro and anti-slave. Were there slaves in the state of Illinois?
There were. You could bring slaves in and out of the state. There was a doctrine, and I'll see if I can dredge it up here. It goes something like this: if you, and this was kind of a part of the set of facts in the Dred Scott case. Missouri was a straight slave state. That's where Dred Scott lived. It's brought into Illinois, a free state. And if you kind of lived here, as a matter of fact, that might have liberated him. But there were slaves in Illinois. There were fugitive slave laws. Lincoln had a couple of slave cases, one on either side, as one representing the slave owner, the other time representing the slave himself or herself. So Illinois was a free state, but there were gradations of the freedom and rights granted to African Americans. Lincoln's first vice presidential running mate was named Hannibal Hamlin. He was from Maine, and I think he was from Maine. And I think the reason he was a vice presidential candidate was Maine at the time was the state that was most liberal in its granting of freedom and rights to African Americans, and so that was kind of a campaign issue.
Thank you.
So I'm going to enjoy the rest of my time here. I hope you do too. Nice to see you all, and I'll see you at the